Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast after the Sunderland game, this time a home game and a win to talk about. Plymouth were the visitors on Saturday, a 3-1 win for Sunderland, albeit a game in which we did go 1-0 down, and it was looking like Plymouth were heading for their second away win of the season, and we are in February. However, it didn't end that way. Sunderland get the 3 points, which did take them into the playoffs, into 6th place. However, a Coventry win today has knocked them straight back out of it, down into 7th, but it was a game that we had to win. It was a game we expected to win, Michael, and we'll get on to the performance because it is very much a game of two halves, but it's 3 points, and it's not a clean sheet, but it's 3 points.
I wonder why you used to mention clean sheet.
Who knows?
Yeah. 3 guesses why that is. Well, first and foremost, I'll get this out the way. Obviously, it was great to see the reception that Michael Beale got on the 4th minute. I'm sure you both echo the sentiments. It was great to see the reception he and his niece Poppy got on the 4th minute of the game.
Yeah.
And I think it's a time like that where criticism of Michael Beale so far has been fair, but abuse, there's a fine line between criticism and abuse. And I think, he's obviously been going through a lot in his personal life. So I still have my doubts about whether he'll succeed with us long term. But because of what he's been through now and what he's had to put up with, I really do hope he turns it around. But time will tell whether he does. Just to put it out there. So fair play to everyone who applauded, and hopefully Poppy gets better. I'm sure we'll all echo those sentiments there. As for the game itself, the 2 halves, it was a weird one because first half I felt, we'll get onto it a bit later on. I'm sure you got onto it later on. But first half I didn't think we were great, but I didn't think we deserved to be getting beat. But second half was much better. To sum it up there. But obviously Coventry annoyingly had to win, which was a little bit of a dampener, but and saying that, though, we're only outside the playoffs on goal difference. We're 2 points off 5th. West Brom and Hull have got games in hand, but just because we've got games in hand doesn't mean they're going to win them. So you just got to keep yourself in the pace, haven't you? And ultimately, if you're wanting to be in the top 6 and you have aspirations of the playoffs again, then games like yesterday, with all due respect to Plymouth, had to be 3 points.
Yeah, and like Michael says there, Kyle, it was 3 points, and it keeps Sunderland in the playoff race. I say we have dropped out back into 7th, but for a season that's been very ropey, is what I would use and the word I would say. And going into this game, I don't know if I mentioned it in the last podcast or not, we'd actually lost more games than 21st placed Huddersfield prior to yesterday. Obviously, they lost to Southampton, we won. So that has very much changed, and they're level on defeats with us now. But the one thing that Sunderland do well is when we do win, we tend to win fairly convincingly. And it was a 3-1 win against Stoke in the previous home game, a 3-1 win today.
Yep.
Obviously, looking back at some of the other games early in the season, the Southampton game, even the Leeds game to an extent, even though the scoreline might not suggest it was a fairly comfortable win. The one thing Sunderland need to do is try and turn a lot of them defeats into at least draws for the remainder of the season.
Absolutely, yeah, and it also just feels like quite a run of outside of the whole game, obviously, where we got shut out, but we're scoring pretty consistently now. It feels like and just like last season, we had that ridiculous stat where we got however many games without not scoring a goal, which was awesome. So we're starting to see that a little bit. Obviously, this season's been a little bit more up and down there. But I know we've mentioned a lot, and a lot of people have that, the middle of the championship is super, it's super close, right? I think it still is, between 10th and 6th is still really close. But these are the types of games that create that space, right? We can't really rely on the other teams to separate themselves when we come up against this type of opposition. And quite frankly, the next 3 or 4 games are all these types of games where it's those middle of the pack type teams that we can create that separation for us and probably kind of lock us within the top 8, which I think is really where we're going to want to be heading into the last few games of the season. So, and goal difference as well. I know it always kind of gets laughed off, but I think in a season that's this close, every goal is going to matter. If we can just keep scoring for fun, that'd be great. So, but a great performance yesterday. I love seeing just some of the tweaks that Beal changed, which I'm sure we'll get on to, and just the way we came out. And I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, the first half was terrible." I didn't think it was that bad.
I thought I didn't think it was. I don't know where people got that from.
I think there was a couple wayward passes, right? There would be those moments where we'd be passing the ball really well, moving really well, and then we just pass it right out of bounds, which does deflate, pretty quickly. But the in between I thought was fine, and then just a weird way to end the first half. But yeah, overall, it's just delighted with the 3 points. I also think timing wise, like I said, run of games very winnable. It's also we have the documentary coming out on Tuesday night as well. So we have this kind of momentum and good feeling going into that, which should, I assume, not to spoil anything, I think it's going to be a happy ending for that. Following Wednesday, we have another match. Like I think this win was going to be big. So I think overall, timing wise, it came at a perfect time.
Yeah, actually ends on quite a
somber note.
Yeah,
I heard it is a little somber, but it's different than the type of heartbreak that I think we've seen. I don't know. I'm excited for it. I love it. I mean, that's how I even found this club to begin with. So I always have a special place for this documentary. So I'm excited for it.
Are you just happy that it doesn't end in crap for once?
Yes. Yes, I am. Yeah, it's gonna be. It's
you and me both, mate. You and me both.
Absolutely.
On the first half, whether you think the first half performance was good or not, was it good? Probably not. Was it bad? Or was it terrible? Probably not. Very much in the middle. But the one thing that happened in that first half is a catastrophe at the back, to be honest, Michael. There's just a terrible goal to concede. We've conceded some poor goals this season, but I think that one probably tops the charts. It's from a Sunderland corner, I think. And Trey Hume tries to play offside in Plymouth's half, which, for those who are familiar with the rules of the game, doesn't work. And it's one pass from the edge of the box in Plymouth's half from Whittaker that finds Hardy, who, goes through Anthony Patterson caught in no man's land and didn't ever really look particularly convincing. Trey Hume tries to get back, doesn't do anything about it, and then Hardy eventually puts it in the back of the net. And I say, just a terrible, terrible, terrible goal to concede.
Funny how it's me that gets this question.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Okay. I think there was grumblings in the ground when that goal happened that, hang on, Hardy's offside. But correct me if I'm wrong.
He was in his own half.
The rules suggest that if the play starts in the opposition half, so in this case, Morgan Whittaker got the assist, didn't he? So it starts in their third.
If the player receiving the ball is in his own half, you can't possibly be offside.
Right, okay. So then that depends. Well, first of all, it depends, because then if Hardy was in his own half, which I think he was probably around the centre circle when he received it. So that's a bit of debate on whether it was actually in his own half or not. Then first of all, it's not offside in that situation. But secondly, even if he was offside, are we really surprised with the officials in this league that goal would have stood if it shouldn't have done?
It was definitely onside. I will add that one.
There you go. No, I thought it was onside. I didn't see a problem with it from a Plymouth perspective. I did have a big amount of problem with how easily we were caught out from it, I have to be honest. But if you look at it, Pato didn't cover himself in glory there. But as I always say, I mean, I'm not a goalkeeper, but for me, it shouldn't have got to that point. We should have been stopping it within the build-up.
He seems to like... I mean, the position that he's in, he's playing a sweeper keeper role, which usually consists of the keeper coming out to deal with them kinds of passes or crosses or whatever, where it's in between the defence and the keeper. That's essentially what most goalkeepers do nowadays.
It was pretty nice. Yeah, the ball.
He's in the position. Yeah. He's in the position to do that, but decides not to, and instead just stands outside of his box. And I think he tries to go in for a tackle, doesn't make the tackle, kind of goes to kind of jockey him a little bit. And I don't even know if he's in his own box by the time the goal goes. By the time the ball goes into the back of the net, possibly he is. But actually, he's just caught in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, he didn't help himself, I will admit, Pato. But again, I'm not a goalkeeper, so it's hard. I don't really like to comment on us as much because I don't feel qualified to do it. Having said that, I do think it was obviously lucky. Again, it was a poor goal to concede, but I think at the end of the day, I think even though it was a poor goal to concede and it was very, very frustrating, I stand by what Kyle said. I didn't think that first half was as bad as what people said it was. I mean, I know Phil Smith from the Sunderland Echo said he felt that it couldn't be argued that Plymouth deserved their lead at half time. And he's a sound lad, he's entitled to his opinion, but I disagreed with it because I thought, well, What did Plymouth do other than that goal? One chance where Hardy got in behind Ballard, where Pato had to save it, and then the goal. Apart from that, what did Plymouth do in the first half? I didn't think they did extra anything. Now, that doesn't particularly mean our performance was good either, because I didn't think we did all that much. But I felt like, probably by default of Plymouth not deserving to be in front, we should have been level. But the point stands, though. Like, it was a poor goal to concede. And it was one where I'm quite worried about, because I believe, and I think someone corrected me on my channel, that that's Plymouth's first, I think it was Plymouth's first defeat since the back end of December, if I've got that right. Mm-hmm. So once they got ahead, and especially with how they got their first away win last week, which I'm quite glad they did, because we know exactly what would have happened if we come into this game on the back of not winning all season away. But once they've gone ahead, these are the type of situations we've been in so many times, where a team comes up here, we can dominate possession, we then concede a silly goal, and then we get frustrated, then they slow the game down, we get more frustrated. It's basically the same old pattern that I've seen dozens, if not hundreds of times at this point. So in that sense, it was a poor goal to concede. But again, like, someone pointed out to me, I think, this morning, I think apparently there's only 3 teams in the championship who've conceded less than us. So maybe I've just got stupidly high standards defensively, but I just think the type of goals we're letting in is still something that needs to be addressed going forward in coming games, because we're not, because like Kyle says, we are scoring goals, but we can't just rely on outscoring the opposition all the time. There are going to be times where we're going to have to shut opposition out. But thankfully, in the end, this goal didn't cost us.
Yeah, and it is just 3 teams that have conceded less: Leicester, Leeds, and West Brom, I think it is. Yeah,
I don't believe that. So what? So Southampton's conceded more than us, and Ipswich have conceded 6 more goals than we have.
Yeah, I think Southampton are either level with us or possibly one above. I'm not sure.
They're one less than us on goal difference, but obviously, I mean, to be fair to Southampton, I think 9 of those goals came across the games against us and Leicester back in September. So make of that what you want to.
Well, the second half, regardless of what you think of the first half, Kyle, was a stark contrast, because the second half is the Sunderland that people know we can be, and very quickly we get that first goal and the game just completely changes. And we'll get on to the rest of the second half as we always do, but that is as good as a second half performance as you're likely to see all season.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing I always look for, especially if you go into the second half and you're already down, I just score early, right? Score early to give you enough time, especially at home, to to take the win and potentially go on from there. But yeah, it immediately came out in the second half. You could tell, when there's all this talk about, I think it was last weekend. It's like, oh, what was Michael Beale's team talk? Because everyone came out and played so negative and this and that, and now it's the opposite. And that's just how fans are. So obviously the team talk went well, and I think he even alluded to that in the press conference. But wonderful free kick. Immediately after I was texting another group chat of Sunderland fans that we have out here, I was just like, man, we just need a set piece specialist, someone who can actually score from a set piece. And then sure enough, because the ones before we had Jack Clark putting it over the bar, we just haven't been close. Ekwell just has to be the main set piece taker from now on. And I think one other thing that people seem to forget here, Patrick Roberts logged his first assist of the season. So congratulations, Patrick.
Just to interrupt you a second, he got his equalizer against Norwich, I think. But
he did. Okay, no, you're right. Yeah, I know his goal contributions. Yeah, no, you're right.
Kyle, I'm just sad. It's fine. It's nothing to do with you.
Right. But that's been the big.
There was quite a few people actually said that Roberts has finally got a goal contribution. I was like, I'm sure he got one early in the season, but
right,
he definitely did.
Yeah, I had always thought he was on 0 for the whole season, but yeah, that's I'll definitely take the word for it. So, but nonetheless, it was I think important for him. I think he came on and played very well. Moved the ball well. Really, just provided us such a different look. The amount of overlaps that we had in that second half immediately, with Trey Hume making the runs, we had Patrick Roberts, Baugh started stepping into it a little bit as well. I think it goes on to say, and I, kind of glossed over it, but the changes that Michael Beale made, with resting Job, which was kind of the most obvious thing that everyone had been saying. And the thing I love is when fans kind of share a sentiment of saying like, hey, this is something that should be done. The coach does it and then it works. I'm not saying he listened to the fans necessarily, but it does give us some validation that like, okay, we're not like we're seeing the same thing here. So I'm glad that worked out. But yeah, I just thought the way we set up, and especially in the second half, they just maybe it was tired legs too. That's a really long journey for Plymouth, but I love the way we started, and then absolutely it all came together with Ekwa's goal off a nice free kick, and just a really really good shot. And so yeah, I think that's really what set us on, because we had the whole second half then to go on and then get the winner. So
yeah. And it wasn't long after Jack Clark scores Sunderland's second, the third of the game in total. And the goal that obviously put Sunderland in front, Michael, which you know what he's going to do, but you can't stop him.
What's the phrase that, you can try and stop someone all you want, but if they're that damn good at it, then it's just hard to stop them, isn't it? So, and I think that sums up Jack Clark's goal perfectly. Yeah, I mean, this kind of reminded me of the reverse game at home park when we lost 2-0, where I think Morgan Whittaker scores not as good a goal, but kind of a similar goal like that, where it's a long curling shot out just outside the box. And basically, in both instances, the defence basically allows them the freedom of the city to hit the shots, don't they? But obviously, look, we know. I'm not going to wax lyrical about Jack Clark's quality, because we all know how good he is. But like Kyle said, I think that getting the equaliser was vital, and it gave us the platform to then score this goal. And I think especially the fact that Plymouth played 120 minutes midweek, didn't they, against that Leeds in the FA Cup. I think that once this goal went in, I started to notice Plymouth's energy levels drop off considerably. And I think just getting in front was the big thing, because once then you get in front, it meant that Plymouth then had to come out and attack the game, which then suits us better when we've got space on the counter to exploit. So, yeah, but it was a great goal. It was absolutely fantastic. It always looks better when it goes in off the post, doesn't it? So, yeah.
The ball from Hume to get out to him was just perfect.
I don't even think that goes down as a Hume assist either. I think
very quickly, actually, I think Hume was, on an unrelated note, I think Hume's an underrated shout for a player who I think played really well yesterday. But, yeah, Clark was, like I said, I was joking to one of my mates as the goal went in, and I said, well, if we don't go up, at least that's his price tag being increased. So that's a good thing where we can get a bit extra money for him. And very quickly, by the way, I'll just quickly rant about this. If you're still someone of the opinion that Jack Clark is not worth at least 25 million, and go and follow a different sport, because I'm sorry, he is. Like, you can't argue with some of the big transfers from this division. If we do end up selling for 25 million, that's the minimum we should be getting in the summer if we sell him, assuming we don't get promoted.
Yeah, I would agree. Third goal, which is the final goal of the game, Kyle, and it's 2 minutes after Job comes on, he gets the goal. And it's one thing that I've said a couple of times in the podcast, is that when Jack Clark's in the team, players don't care about anyone else.
Right.
And that's exactly what happens here, because Joe picks it up just about in Plymouth's half. And before you know it, he's on the edge of the 6-yard box. No one closing him down, because everyone's focused on, they're probably going to pass the ball to Jack Clark here, probably going to give the ball to Clark here. And I think Clark still, even though Job has the ball, Clark has 2 men on him. Job cuts inside, very similar to finish to Jack Clark's. And that's one thing that Sunderland probably haven't utilised as much as they should have so far this season. Hopefully we do see it a little bit more in the latter stages of it. Is that, like I say, when you have Jack Clark on the pitch, you don't even need to use him for him to have a massive effect on your chances going forward, because people will mark him no matter who has the ball. And when you've got 2 players marking Clark, that's 2 less players marking the player with the ball, and that creates a space for Job to run into and, ultimately seal the game.
Yeah, and another thing too that goes to that, when we play this formation, when we actually have kind of a recognized striker up top, and to be honest, I'm not even sure if Rustam was in. I think he was, right, when he scored. But nonetheless, having that striker up top too, it stretches the middle part of the field. So that way, you saw it even with Dan Neal as well. Dan Neal had so much more room to operate. Same with Job. Job came on. There was so much room in the midfield for him to pick up the ball and do, quite frankly, what he does best, which is, just move forward and attack with the ball. And I think, everyone's going to go and say, oh, yeah, see, he needed a rest. He needs to come off the bench and this and that. I don't even think physically it's as much as, needing a rest, but also, like, mentally, I think plays a big part too. I think when you look at youth, I think we forget age a lot, because we've already seen our youth step up so much and play all these meaningful minutes and things like that. But the typical role of an 18-year-old in a team, especially one with talent, is someone who comes on with 20 minutes and says, your only goal today, you just attack. You attack the goal. And that's really what you're best at, right? At 18 years old, you're usually only really, really good at about one thing. For Job, I think it's this attacking part. Yes, he's got other parts of his game that are great, but when you can go on and just say, all right, son, just keep the blinders on. This is your one role. You're just going to attack and do what you do best. That's exactly what he did. And so I don't think it was like, oh yeah, he needed the rest because his legs are tired. I think it's just mentally, like, having to play the midfield like he has, there's so much responsibility. And I think a lot of times it takes him out of position or takes him out of that, that role just to say, hey, I'm just going to pick up the ball and go, because by then you're chasing around defenders and you're tired. So maybe it is a little bit of both. That's what I'm getting at. But I'd love to see it, and especially because Jude scored 2 as well. So I'm sure, good for what a family. My goodness,
I think Jude went off injured as well, so I'm sure we'll see him at.
Right. That's got the add-on to the Job thing as well. Like, I think that the idea, as you guys know, and as you both will probably see in the chat, I'm a big Speakman defender. But one comment he made that I thought was a load of bollocks was when he said Job doesn't need a rest. Nah, that's nonsense. Like, sorry. It's not just the fact that, obviously, like Kyle said, mentally, I think
as well, though, I think one thing that people probably don't consider when Speakman comes out and says that is, if Speakman comes out and says, Job hasn't been performing well, he looks knackered, he needs to come out of the team.
Yeah.
You kind of think, look at it from Job's point of view, like, whoa, right,
it's man management,
not great.
Sure.
And it is kind of a bit of both. Like, he is in a way just trying to defend Job, because, like I say, if he comes out and says he needs a rest, it's almost slagging off his performances in a way. So I can sort of see why Speakman would come out and say that, but.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually. I didn't think about that. But, well, all right then. But even so, the point was that I felt, he does need a bit of a breather. It's not in the fact that his performances have been to the point where he's just not been very good. It's just the fact that I think he's been fatigued. And I think we saw this exact same case with Dan Neil even 2 years ago. Before he got taken out of the team. And Dan Neil, for me, now is a much, much better player for it now. And obviously Dan Neil's much further along in his journey than what Joe Bellingham is. But I think with Joe, once he has a bit of a rest, a bit of a breather over the next couple of weeks, I think he will be a better player for it. And I think if you then say give him a rest for the next couple of weeks and then you bring him back into the fold, I think we'll see better performances from him then. And I think we've got the players to cope without him in the meantime, to the point where he does come back and we get better performances. It'll help us in the run into hopefully finishing in the playoffs.
Yeah. And very quickly, before we briefly look ahead to Wednesday's game, Kyle, we mentioned Dan Neil there. He is the best. I mean, obviously, there's been interest in quite a few of some of these players recently, especially over the January window, where you've got Equa linked, you've got Job linked, you've got Clark linked, you've got a few other players linked with Premier League clubs and top European clubs as well. Jack Clark and Dan Neil are Premier League footballers, and Dan Neil probably had his best ever performance in a Sunderland shirt yesterday, which
it was great.
Probably will go unnoticed because he's playing that midfield role where he's not going to score many. And quite frankly, I think that's down to the fact that I don't think I've seen anyone with a worse shot on him. Someone seriously needs to tell him to stop shooting. But, he's not going to get goals. He's not going to get many assists. So, when you look at the stats, you're like, he's all right. Didn't do too much in the game. But when you actually watch him,
it was the best. That I think it was in the first half. Was it that like half volley that he just like sprayed out perfectly? I mean, it obviously didn't get there, to Jack Clark, but it was that.
Just to stop you there as well, the one comparison I'll make is Jordan Henderson, and I know people said that throughout the years really since Daniel came into the team, but not just because of the way he plays, but because of the way he's portrayed as well. So many times people are like, why is Jordan Henderson playing for England? How is Jordan Henderson getting a game for Liverpool? Right. Because he's not this flashy player who's going to get 20 goals and assists per season, who's going to elastico around a good defender and stick it in the top corner. But the role he plays in the team goes massively unnoticed.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't know, I'm not tactically astute enough to really know all of the changes that Beale's made, but yesterday it just felt like he had all that space in the middle. And what I love is when he has the time to be able to turn on the ball and move upfield, because he's just, for one, he's pretty big. He's big, he's physical, holds on to the ball really well. I think there was one other play that stood out late. It was pretty late in the game, actually. I think we were already up 3-1, but Plymouth was actually starting to kind of put a little pressure on. But we got the ball in our own box. We passed it into him inside, and he did this neat little just turn, just right out of two attacking players that were right there, just right between them, split them, and then boom, he's upfield. And then we got Chris Rigg in front of him, running in. And when I look at the team right now, just really quick, like you said, I think we are going to probably lose some, especially in the likes of Neil and Clark as well. But if we're able to convince like Chris Rigg and Job, for example, to kind of be those next players, right? Like, hey, like look at what we've done for the likes of Jack Clark and Dan Neal. You know, if you guys give us 1 or 2 more seasons, like this could also be you, and make sure that you can choose like the best spot for you moving forward. I mean, the future's pretty bright if we can find a way to hold on, because I feel like Rigg and Joe, obviously they play slightly different positions, but Rigg especially, you know, when you see him come on, he's big. He's a big kid, and God, he just has such natural attacking ability, and the future's bright if we can find a way, even if we lose Neal and Job, or Neal and Clark is what I'm getting at, that we might have some
place to
waiting.
step in to replace them, haven't we? That's
right.
The one thing I would add to that, though, if you don't mind, I think is we've all talked about the idea that Neal might leave in the summer. I actually think that we're probably bigger risk of losing Ballard personally than we are Neal. I think, and I think even something as simple, well, there is a point to this. Don't worry. But no, like, if we don't get promoted, right, there's no doubt in my mind Jack Clark goes in the summer, no doubt, and I wouldn't begrudge him moving to the Premier League either, because I think he deserves a shot at it. Dan Neal, I think, because, and I know this might be a sentimental thing, I think the fact that he's a fan of Sunderland, I think we keep him at the club a season longer. If I genuinely can see Dan Neal staying at the. I think Clark and Ballard are the 2 that I could see leaving the most. Look, just because I say this doesn't mean Neal definitely won't move, but I think Neal, I've got a feeling we can keep on to him a season or so longer. But to answer what you 2 have said, like, he's just quality. Like, and I'm all for respecting people's opinions, and it's fine if people don't rate Dan Neal, but I just don't get how some don't rate him. I think he does a lot of the unsung work, like what Josh said earlier about Henderson, you know, comparing the 2 of them. Like, just because someone's not a flashy player doesn't mean they don't have a role in the team. And I think fans need to be a bit more clued up, in my opinion, on that. You know, just because sometimes it's about team cohesion and what's balanced for the team. What's the best system for the team, you know? And I'll bet you, if we do end up losing Dan Neal in the summer, those who don't see his talent now and his qualities will be sure as hell missing him next season.
Yeah. Hopefully they aren't missing.
Well, I got a feeling we keep him next season, but I could be wrong.
I only know one Dan Neal hater, but he's just doing it as like a bit now. Like he knows it's ridiculous.
Has to be.
It's because he's just the best. He's just so good.
Yes. Wednesday is the next game. Huddersfield away from home. I've already mentioned them once, and I'm going to mention them again because that is the next game. Another game we have to win. Another game that, you know, performance matters, but 3 points matters more. And very quickly, just the scoreline prediction for this one. Michael, starting with you.
Last time we went 2-1, we won, so I'll go 2-1 Sunderland again. If you want to be in the top 6 like with Plymouth, this is a game you need to be winning.
Yeah, and Kyle?
They've only lost 1 of their last 5. Granted, they've all been 1-1 draws.
It'll be trickier than people think it will be, but we do need to win, I think.
Yeah, I'll go 2-0. I think it'll be nervy toward the end. We'll get 1 late and then get 1 at the very end as well. So we'll go 2-0.
Even better.
Okay,
it'll be right after, and like I said, everyone will be feeling good from the documentary, you know, from the Netflix series. It's gonna be great. That comes out Tuesday.
In time for a date with Tony Mowbray and Alex Pritchard.
Oh gosh, you know, the storylines write themselves.
The Job Pritchard Mowbray derby.
Yeah, Joe Bellingham derby. Remember, Joe Bellingham's crap though. He's sideways move going to Sunderland.
It is. But that's on Saturday. That's a long way away from now.
Yeah, true. Got to get out.
All attentions towards Wednesday's game at Huddersfield, which we'll get a podcast out at some point during the week to discuss that, and then again to look ahead to that game on Saturday against Birmingham. But until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.